The crunch of leaves beneath our boots echoed through the uncharted forest as Connor, Steph, and I embarked on what was supposed to be a casual hike. Connor had brought up the idea, perhaps due to his unusual fascination with the mysterious and eerie. The rumors of occult practices in these woods were long-standing, and whispers of remnants from those dark days lingered like a shadow. I think deep down I may have known this was Connor's only reason for wanting to go. Honestly, I would have done just about anything to hang out with Steph. She and Connor may have been dating for most of the school year, but I had been crushing on her since elementary school. I guess it was my own fault for not taking my shot. About 20 minutes in, we lost the trail and began to lose our bearings. Steph tried to check our location on her phone, but it was futile. No reception. Connor and I both checked as well. Same deal. I glanced at Steph, concern etched in her features. Our laughter and excitement from the beginning of the hike had transformed into an unsettling silence, punctuated only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional caw of a crow. After another 10 minutes, we stumbled upon a small clearing where stood an ancient, dilapidated shack hidden away from the world. The sight of it sent shivers down my spine. There were no windows and only one opening, where there was probably once a door. The structure appeared to have been built around a deep, dark hole in the ground. Suspicious dark stains marred the stone floor around it, and the air reeked of decay. My unease grew as I exchanged another worried look with Steph. The pit in the center of the shack seemed to swallow light itself, an abyss that held more secrets than I dared imagine. Despite my discomfort, Connor was oddly drawn to the place. His eyes glittered with an unsettling excitement, and he mumbled something incomprehensible under his breath. Steph and I exchanged more worried glances, a silent plea to escape this place. "Connor, we need to get out of here," I said, my voice laced with urgency. He hesitated, torn between his fascination and my growing unease. Finally, he relented, and the three of us exited the shack. The clouds had gathered overhead, casting a suffocating gray pallor over the forest. Steph clutched my arm, her eyes scanning the woods nervously. "Jake," she said, "we need to leave. This place is giving me the creeps." I nodded in agreement, my heart racing in time with hers. As troubling as our current situation was, there was also something nice about the connection I felt we had out there. But as we began walking, I couldn't help but notice a brief secret smile Connor shared with her, a sweet smile that ignited a pang of jealousy within me. As if on cue, a shrill guttural cry pierced the air. It was unlike any sound I'd ever heard, primal and unsettling. We all froze in place. Suddenly, Connor took off to our left, his footsteps crashing through the undergrowth. He was going in completely the wrong direction. Steph and I struggled to keep up, but panic and fear fueled our flight. The forest seemed to close in around us as the sky grew darker. The rain began to fall, a torrential downpour that soaked us to the bone. The forest, once our playground, was now a labyrinth of shadows and unknown dangers. The heavy drops obscured my vision, and in the confusion I lost sight of Connor. Steph clung to my arm, her grip tightening with every step. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "Jake, we need to find him. We can't leave him out here alone." As much as I wanted to agree, a primal instinct urged me to escape the woods and find help. But Steph's desperation was clear, and the love in her eyes was a vulnerability that I couldn't ignore. Then a voice echoed through the trees and the rain. Connor's voice, murmuring words that seemed to warp reality itself. It sounded like it was coming from the direction of the shack. My heart raced, and Steph's grip on my arm tightened. Together, we walked toward the source of the sound, retracing our steps back through the woods. More voices, a cacophony of whispers and eerie laughter, were now dancing on the edge of our hearing, an unsettling backdrop to our frantic search. We found Connor back at the clearing, inside the shack, standing by the pit. His back was to us. He was whispering words I couldn't comprehend, his voice mingling with the rain and the strange cries of the forest. As I approached, he looked back at me over his shoulder, and I realized his eyes were no longer hazel. They were almost black, like twin voids. "Connor!" I called, my voice shaking. He turned, revealing the knife in his hand. A slow, twisted smile spread across his face as he stepped toward us. "You shouldn't have come back, Jake," he said. Steph screamed, her fear and shock echoing through the forest. I yelled for her to run as Connor's gaze bore into me with an unnatural intensity. I felt transfixed to that spot until Steph cried out my name and my feet began to move. She and I ran as fast as our trembling legs could carry us, our hearts pounding in time with our footfalls. We could hear Connor running after us, maybe 15 yards behind. But somehow there were others. I know I could hear others running, chasing us. There were footsteps on both sides of us, as if people were dodging trees and leaping over the brush to close in on us. We thought the woods were going to stretch on endlessly, but soon the rain started to mask the sound of our pursuers until the only footsteps were our own, and our feet didn't stop until we were out of the woods and in sight of my car. And although the sounds of the chase had faded, I still couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. We saw no one else, not even Connor, as we took one last hurried look toward the trees. Mortified at the thought of leaving him, we sank into the car and drove away. Days passed, the horror of that day settling into an uneasy quiet. We reported what happened, but there were no answers, only questions that seemed to vanish into the ether. We tried to move on, to return to our normal lives, but the memory of those woods lingered, a shadow that refused to fade. A couple of weeks later, as I drove near the edge of those woods, I spotted a figure walking along the road in the opposite direction. Before I passed him, I realized it was Connor. His eyes, once vibrant hazel, were still black as the abyss. He smiled at me, a wicked grin that chilled me to my core. He was no longer the person I knew, and yet I was overcome by the good memories I had with my friend. So I forced myself to slam on the brakes and jump out of the car, scanning the area frantically. But he was just gone. My friend was gone.